On the front row. It's on the second row, behind the deacons, with the ladies in the white outfits.
Oh, yeah, you got to be careful. They'll get slayed in the spirit and fall back on you.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's edition of Black Health Trust. We are really happy that you chose to spend this time with us. Today, we're going to talk about something, but that's not the point. The point is not to talk about it, but for we use the information to do something about it. And that something is excess deaths in the Black community. So
Mm.
without further ado, I'll turn it over to our founder, Dr. Randall Maxey.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barbara Davis Stevens. Thank you, Dr. Walks, Dr. Hines, and Dr. Lawson for joining as co-moderators. And I give my hats off to you. Every week you give such good information and good comments as we go, and you're doing this. It occurred to me when I was in church today, Dr. Walks, to say that even though we may not be ministers of the gospel, we are in a way our own health ministry, that we do try to provide information to our community and our people. So we are all performing something that I think is extremely valuable. So on the past few years, I've gained a few grandchildren, and I have gotten on the floor to play with them. And I noticed that it's not as easy to get up off the floor as it used to be. And I
No.
read another article that said if you have to use your hands to get up off the floor, most of those people have about 5 to 6 years to live. So I said, I got to figure out this how to get up off the floor without using my hand. That's something to go for. But we want to go to the first slide, and I ask my co-moderators to help me on some of the slides as we go forward. Put the slides up, Simon, please. Can you get up off the floor, Dr. Walks?
I can. I had to start with getting up out of the chair without using my hands. That's something that's a place we all need to start. When it's time to stand up, lean forward and stand up. Don't use your hands. If you can't do that, you got work to do before you get to the floor part.
Is this the first slide, Simon? Anyway, I thought I had one before that, but all-cause mortality, we know that there's persistent mortality gap despite an overall decline. And we live longer than we used to, but there's still a major gap between the white community and the Black community. And guess who's living the shortest? It's the Black folks. So we know that that is something that we got to cure. Next slide. So the excess mortality, there's some clinical drivers that happen. One has early onset and severity of hypertension. That's a deadly one. If there's higher cardiometabolic burden, we've talked about that for a number of weeks. There's disproportionate chronic kidney disease and cardiovascular mortality. And there's a higher impact of chronic stress. That stress is there all the time, and that's part of what structural racism is. Next slide. Go past this one. We just did this one. So let's start with our youngest, Dr. Hines. Will you take this one?
Sure. So hypertension and vascular biology. So salt sensitivity and volume expansion. And so the relationship between salt sensitivity and the subsequent volume expansion that follows the salt, the fluid that follows the salt, plays a role in hypertension. Endothelial dysfunction, where your endothelial cells are part of that inner lining of your blood vessel walls, left ventricular hypertrophy, that left side of your heart has to work harder to pump blood as your blood vessels don't function like they should. So since your heart is a muscle, what does the muscle do when it works hard? It gets bigger. And then earlier target organ damage are all things that are related to hypertension and the impacts on that vascular structure.
Yeah, so this leads to more stiff blood vessels, right? And that's a circle,
Absolutely.
and more high blood pressure and more end organ damage. And the end organs that get damaged are things like the heart, the kidneys, and everything that has blood flow. And hopefully everything in your body that has blood flow is alive, at least now. Next slide.
So
Dr. Fox?
Metabolic dysfunction beyond BMI, your body mass index. So visceral adiposity at a lower BMI. So you can have this fat going on in the middle without having the markedly high BMI. So you may not look like you're morbidly obese, but inside of your body, there's just too much fat being deposited around your middle, around your insides. Again, insulin resistance. We talk about this a lot. It's a big deal when your body begins to not respond to insulin. We talked, I think it was last week, we talked about postprandial glucose spikes. Postprandial meaning after you eat, your glucose goes up higher than it should go. And that folks are starting to believe is related to increased Alzheimer's risk. And then sarcopenic obesity with aging. Sarcopenic obesity, that's when you really big, Dr. Maxey, right?
Yeah, that's when you can't get up off the floor without your hands. So it's when
Okay.
you're big in the middle, but you have weakness in muscles and more fat around abdominal fat. And it's something that we want to talk about more as we go forward. But that's I like
And
that
and
word.
yeah, and let me just say, Dr. Maxey, that whenever you or I or anyone else kind of jokes about some of these things, it's just an example of how we love and joke with each other. It's not because these are not very serious things. Having visceral adiposity, sarcopenic obesity, all of those kinds of things where you have the muscles are just weak. You can't move. It's bad. So
So I appreciate those comments. The other thing just brings to my mind, people can be either shaped like a pear or an apple. And those that are shaped like an apple, where there's fat around the gut or the belly, are worse off than those who are shaped like a pear, who have maybe a big booty but a slim waist, because it's that fat around the waist that makes you shaped like an apple that's the deadly one. Next slide. Dr. Barbara?
Kidney disease and the APO1 L1 risk. Higher chronic kidney disease progression rates are seen in individuals who have that gene APOL1. It's associated with pathology in the kidney, underuse of albuminuria, albuminuria screening, which is something that is a big thing that Dr. Maxey emphasizes a lot, that it's not screened for enough. And if it were screened for appropriately, a lot of damage could be avoided because it's picked up, or the issue is picked up earlier. And then the cardiorenal mortality linkage. What we mean when we say that is when there is cardio or cardiovascular disease, you might as well be saying that there's kidney disease, because the two are intimately linked.
Thank you so much. Next slide. So, Dr. Walks, is Dr. Lawson on?
I don't see Dr. Lawson as yet.
Okay, then this one's for you then, Dr. Walsh, if
All
you
right.
would.
Treatment gaps and equity-based care, something we talk about a lot. That's absolutely related to the difference in morbidity and mortality. So delayed specialty referrals, under prescription of guideline-directed medical therapy, cost and access barriers, distrust from historical harm, that we don't trust that when we go for care, we're going to get good care. Routine albuminuria screening. Dr. Neighbor-Stevens just mentioned this one. Early SGLT2I and ns-mRNA use. Lower BP thresholds when appropriate. Integrating mental health and sleep care. These are things that need to be paid attention to because there are gaps themselves and they can contribute to the gaps in lifespan that we talked about.
So Dr. Walsh,
Yes, sir.
you were head of the health department for City of DC.
I was.
So how did you get the medical profession to not just treat people based upon their knowledge, but to use guideline-directed medical therapy? Is there benefit in that, and how do we move toward not just everybody doing their own thing, but following some guidelines that have been proven to be beneficial? How do we approach people that both on the caretaker side and the care receiver side?
So I heard something decades ago that didn't have to do with healthcare at the time, but I said, that makes sense for healthcare as well. And the statement is, what can't be measured can't be valued. It's very hard to say you value stuff when you're not paying attention to it and measuring it. And so, as Dr. Hines probably knows better than anybody else, because she's up with all of the new stuff people are doing, there are all these guidelines. There are these things called HEDIS guidelines. There's something Dr. Neighbor-Stevens probably knows really, really well, where there are, I can't think of what it's called now, but it's where you're supposed to have a certain number of screenings and types of screenings and types of immunizations and all of that in children by a certain age. So as the health department director, I had to pay attention to all of those things. And that's when this what can't be measured, can't be valued came to me. If we're just saying, I like you, I care about you, but there's no way for me to measure your behavior, it's hard for me to say that I am agreeing with you that you do actually care about that and that you are actually doing a good job. So when placed in a position of responsibility, it is always an opportunity for me to look at, what am I measuring? What are we actually getting back when we either pay people for something or we authorize people to do something? So that's a long answer, but I got a much longer one. That was my shorter version. The shortest version is, I was, and I think most of us are, variably successful with that. There's some things that we can get people to do well, usually because we measure them and we pay them. And then there are some things that no matter how much we encourage people to do them, we don't get them to do.
The other thing I want to call attention to on this slide is that the early use of the SGLT2s and MRAs, and also I didn't mention the Ozempic. It's been, a lot of people wanted to take those drugs because they want to lose weight, and that's true. But the real benefit of these is decreases your cardiovascular mortality, and the other one, the NS non-steroidal MRA, helps save your kidneys. And they cost a lot, but the other good thing that our dear president has done in the past week or so is lower the cost of these drugs. So they're not just obese drugs, not just fat drugs, but they tend to help you decrease your cardiovascular mortality. And the other thing on here I'd like you to comment on briefly, Dr. Walsh, is where the last part where it says mental health and sleep care. So many people don't sleep well and they don't believe in mental health. The favorite word is, I'm not crazy, I don't need mental health. What's that problem?
Well, I think Dr. Maxey and Dr. Lawson is on, and I'm always happy to have him comment and add to anything that I say about mental health. Um, yes, people do think, well, anytime you say mental health, it's crazy. And I think that the opportunity that we have here on Black Health Trust and every doctor and practitioner has is to just normalize mental health. Make it part of what you ordinarily ask people about. I remember we had to do this years ago when we were asking folks about sexual orientation as HIV and AIDS was coming in. We had to normalize part of the conversation is asking folks about their sexual orientation. So we need to be able to ask folks about mental health so it's not something that people see as weird or an indication that they're crazy, and then help them understand that our bodies need sleep. We need to be able to do something to allow us to sleep routinely and to sleep effectively. So it isn't only mental health, but mental health is a large part of being able to relax and get yourself to sleep. So anybody who wants me to give them a private 15-hour lecture on the importance of calming your brain down so you can get some rest at night, happy to do it.
Thank you, Dr. Watts. Let's go to the next slide. So, Dr. Hines, can you help with this slide? This talks about cardiometabolic progression.
Sure. So, kind of a visual of what we were talking about before. So, as we have high blood pressure, right, and as we were talking about before, with that salt sensitivity and volume expansion, then we get high blood pressure, and then the high blood pressure links to that endothelial dysfunction, which can lead to those blood vessels not being as flexible and elastic as we would like them to be. They also get a little bit sticky. And then as your heart has to work harder to pump through those blood vessels, then you get LVH, which is that left ventricular hypertrophy we were talking about before. And then after that can come end organ damage, and that is the chronic kidney disease, the CKD that we mentioned earlier, and the cardiovascular, I'm gonna DE. Let's I feel like it's a game show.
Yes,
What might death?
cardiovascular death.
The other thing I just wanted to comment on from the other slide, when we were talking about the term for the lay term for, it's not exactly a lay term, but for that people with the normal BMI, but the low, still with visceral fat, it's like skinny fat, right? So skinny fat is a thing. And one of the things when we were talking about GLP-1s is that there is a concern that the GLP-1s are going to create a group of skinny fat people, because one of the issues there is you lose weight, right? But then you're also losing muscle mass too.
Very important point. I think we're going to cover that in some of the subsequent slides coming up. Next slide. Dr. Lawson?
Okay, this states about stress biology, the HPA axis. Just a nice slide showing that chronic stress is associated with increased cortisol, which leads to insulin resistance, hypertension, and inflammation. And it ties in with all the other disorders that we've talked about: cardiovascular disease, dementia, and we've also found that our studies show that chronic stress and increased cortisol is associated with actual shrinkage of the hippocampus. So post-traumatic stress disorder changes that we see in combat veterans, we also see in people in many of our communities. And this is also related to the problems with sleep problems, as well as, again, insulin resistance, chronic stress associated with people requiring more insulin, that they can't control their diabetes. And we've long known that folks living in our communities have elevated rates of hypertension, whereas our ancestors and folks in other countries who do not have the chronic stress that we have simply don't have this hypertension. And then finally, the appreciation of inflammation, which is tied in with a number of these disorders. To addressing the inflammation makes a big difference in terms of long-term outcomes.
Okay. And the other thing that HPA means hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So how do you tie that together in terms of how the body works, Dr. Lawson, especially the brain, and how does this fit into?
Again, the hypothalamus is very important in terms of monitoring all of these, and the amygdala, very important in terms of monitoring all of these other activities in the body. Through the hypothalamus runs glucose metabolism, regulation of blood pressure, and also the response to stress or inflammation. And it feeds into the adrenals, the remote areas in the endocrine system, as well as the cortical areas as well. So all of these are tied together. Must not forget prefrontal cortex, which is that part of us that make decisions in terms of whether or not we're going to live life choices that's going to worsen the effects in terms of the HPA axis.
So that first word in there, the word stress, can you emphasize a bit how stress does?
Yeah, a lot of us assume, unfortunately, there's too many people in our community. Studies have shown that many of us are exposed to chronic stress, and we disregard it. We just said, that's lifestyle. That's how it's supposed to be. And it's not supposed to be. You're not supposed to live in an environment in which you're chronically being criticized, in which your opinion is disregarded, or in which you have financial stresses, where you have housing insecurity. All of these not only mean you don't have a place to live, not only means it's difficult to regulate your diet because you don't have anything to eat. It not only means you don't have the money to buy the things you need, it has an ongoing impact in terms of your body that's leading to premature aging, as well as the elevated cortisol, which then goes right into your hypothalamic pituitary axis, and then impacts the endocrine system, diabetes risk, your cardiovascular system. All of these are all being stimulated by chronic stress. We need to make sure that chronic stress, we're well aware of it. We don't use to ask people about, we don't measure it. Let them know you got a stressful lifestyle, not just that you need to reduce the stress, feel good, you need to reduce the stress to live.
And before we get off later, I want to make sure we address some measures to get our stress levels down. Let's go to the next slide. Dr. Nabors-Stevens?
Why BMI underestimates risk. A normal BMI, the progression of the increase in the visceral fat that takes you out of the normal BMI range contributes to the development of inflammation. The inflammation then, and I'm not sure what the IR is representing.
No, I'm not sure either on that number.
But it definitely,
Insulin resistance.
I'm sorry?
Insulin resistance.
Oh, yeah. Then you progress to the insulin resistance, which then can lead you on into the number of entities. But on this slide, it's highlighting atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease.
And to tell them what that is.
Well, I think the colloquial is hardening of the arteries. From physiologic, it is stiffening of the vessels due to a reaction to the inflammation and the deposition of fat in the vessels, which decrease the flow of the blood, which then harms and impedes the way the different organs, specifically the heart and the brain and the kidneys, function.
Let's go to the next slide. You want to take that listen to, Barbara?
Okay, what is the waist to height ratio? This is a measurement that I would say, maybe over the last 10 years has come to the fore to be a better way to estimate risk, much better than BMI, which has numerous reasons why it is not an accurate assessment of risk. And what it is it's the ratio of your waist to your height, which compares your waist size to your height. The formula is waist height ratio equals your waist size divided by your height in inches. The goal would be to keep your waist less than half of your height.
That's interesting. Next slide. I think that's related, so just take this one.
Okay, so if we look at the ratio value or the risk level that is achieved when you look at an increasing waist to height ratio, when you have a healthy ratio, which as we just learned was your waist is half or less of your height. If your waist starts to become a higher
Hmm.
value, closer to the value of your height, that means that you have an increased risk. And the graph shows us that as that waist measurement increases, your risk goes up. And it's a very high risk when you have a waist that's over 0.6 of your height.
So, and I think, Dr. Stevens, the way you measure that is you take the top part of your hip bone, which is your coccyx, not the top part of your hip bone, and your last rib, and you get the midpoint between that, which is about the level of your umbilical cord or navel, and that's what you measure your abdominal girth with, and that is what you use to divide your height. So, in a practical way to do that. Let's go to the next slide.
So Dr. Maxey, before you look, I'm tired of y'all scaring me on Black Health Trust. I just had to get my phone and put some numbers in, and I think I might live to next Sunday, but y'all need to stop doing that, okay?
Okay. Why don't you take this slide since you're already speaking?
Since I already interrupted. Okay, why these numbers matter? They do matter. Higher BMI or higher waist size, not may, but probably will increase risk for heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, kidney disease. These are the things that we have been talking about. These are the things we always talk about because these are the things that people don't seem to be able to do a whole lot about. We continue to have problems in our community with heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and kidney disease. And you don't have to lose 80 pounds. Small improvements can lower health risks. And I think we need to, the most important part of this, I think, is consistent small improvements. You don't want to keep bouncing up and down, but if you consistently exercise, if you consistently push back from the French fries, if you consistently do things that make these numbers better, it makes a huge difference.
You know, something I read today, Dr. Walks, it said that for women, every year they lose about 0.6 of their mobility.
Mm.
For men, they lose about 0.8% mobility. So women tend to keep mobility and able to exercise much longer. But the point you made about doing a little bit every day helps, whether it be stretching, bending, or whatnot, to keep yourself in as much motion as you possibly can. And I get this article every day called Super Age, which me and Dr. Lawson are in that age group now. And it says a little bit helps. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to do an hour's worth of exercise, but even if you do 10 minutes of exercise, just moving and make sure you move something. It helps.
Well,
The
and
point
also,
you
Dr.
made
Max,
about doing a little bit, that's very important.
and also, Dr. Maxey, as you and Dr. Lawson talked about earlier, the stress part of this, doing a little bit every day makes a difference. If you can find a way to not have your schedule running your life, if you can find a way to use some of those additional resources that are out there to lower that load that oftentimes we have to carry around, that makes a difference too.
Okay. Thank you so much. Next slide. Dr. Hines?
Sure. Why heart and kidney disease progress faster? So we've got the high blood pressure, and earlier and stronger is not good. Meaning, I'm assuming if you get it earlier in your life and the worse it is going to make that blood vessel injury happen. And then the heart thickening, the LVH, and then the kidney damage shows up as protein in your urine or albuminuria, which are some of the things that when you get that annual blood work, potentially that you might be getting is your doctor should be checking for as far as kidney function or in your urine studies.
The other thing this brings to mind, and Dr. Neighbor might want to comment on this, if you, and I know we don't do it, but if you did a biopsy of a blood vessel in a baby whose family had a history of high blood pressure, that basement membrane, those endothelial blood vessels, will be thicker. So that point about having blood pressure higher can actually start during infancy. Is there any evidence of that, Dr. Neighbor-Stevens, of babies showing some evidence of high blood pressure if they come from a family that has a history of that?
I have not seen that, but what I have seen has been the impact of hypertension on the fetus.
Okay. We'll speak about that a minute.
Well, what they are seeing is the babies, the fetuses that are in utero in an environment where there is hypertension in the mother, and it's probably multifactorial. It's effects on the blood flow across the placenta, but it's also probably related to renin levels as well. But they are following these children, and they do seem to have hypertension later in life, as well as mothers who develop hypertension during pregnancy. I wish Dr. Yolanda Lawson was on today. Mothers that who did not go into the pregnancy with hypertension, but develop hypertension during the pregnancy, subsequently have high blood pressure. So there's an increased incidence of it. So there is definitely relationships.
And also with those mothers that get placentia abrevio, placentia, with problems with placenta during birth, they have problems with high blood pressure later. And it also means that these kids have high blood pressure later in life, but earlier than normal people would. Next slide. Dr. Wallace, can you take this one?
Yeah. How chronic stress becomes disease. Psychiatric stress translated into medical risk. This again supports some of the earlier comments. Chronic stress from racism, which is often chronic, and then trauma, which we think about as individual events, but can be chronic trauma. If you've got those things going on and you've got high cholesterol going on all day, the high blood sugar, the insulin resistance, the the high blood pressure and inflammation, we talk about these as maybe, or as things becoming more likely. And I think we have to do that because there are some people that walk around with high blood sugar and high blood pressure, and they're just, they're on TV. I live to be 104 by drinking whiskey every day and smoking cigarettes. Uh, those are the rare exceptions. For most people that live in a very high stress environment, people that have these kinds of conditions that we've been talking about, the life expectancy is just lower. So every time somebody says, well, oh, well, I have an uncle who is, yeah, okay, that's your uncle. That's not almost anybody else. So we really do have to take this very seriously and let people know, no, just because you have one person on TikTok who's telling you that they do this really unhealthy thing and it makes them feel great. No, no. This whole thing about chronic stress, this whole thing about how folks are not actually engaging in healthy behaviors like good sleep and exercise, yeah, chronic stress becomes disease. Not usually, maybe. Chronic stress becomes disease.
Is there somebody has a hand up?
Um,
An unidentified Zoom user has had their hand up.
Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Maxie, I just want to throw out, and Dr. Walks is well aware of this phenomenon called implicit bias.
Mm.
That is that if you go around and ask people, are you under stress? Bad things happening to you, a lot of folks will deny it. When in fact, on a day-to-day basis, they get statements, comments about their behavior, how the world is, that they interpret it, and it is frank racism, but the person who's providing that information does not see it that way or feel that they're actually treating these folks very nicely. The crimes, you're not good enough, but that's okay because you're genetically inferior, so of course you're not good enough. Your work is not up to the level of everyone else, but that's okay. It's not because you're black, it's just that you're just not up to it. This chronic implicit bias that's ongoing day in, day out, but the person is not, since it's not given legitimacy by the larger culture, the person has to keep it inside. And the result is that you have all the occasion for ongoing stress, for risk of stroke, risk of heart disease, risk of diabetes, risk of kidney failure, all of these. And then when the person actually goes out and drops dead, so well, he was always in a nice, comfortable environment. Everyone treated him so nicely. When in fact, the person was kept inside, the constantly criticisms, demeaning statements, and other things that had led to ongoing stressful thinking.
Dr. Lawson, you were so eloquent, but I can't help but say this. It looks like a duck. It walks like a duck. It sounds like a duck.
So it may not be implicit, it's real.
Well,
The next slide is sarcopenic obesity. It's a low muscle mass with a high fat mass. It's associated with a higher mortality. Next slide.
It looks like Dr. Gibson is the unidentified Zoom user who has been raising his hand.
Okay. Dr. Gibson, you want to comment?
I do actually. There's a common thread that I've seen over numerous slides of inflammation, and that inflammation, I think, is there's some kind of corollary between that or there seems to be anyway, and stress, and being a Black person in America is just inherently stressful. I have to just put that out there, and we can, you know, do what we choose to deal with that. But there's several other things in addition to that thread of stress being present in many of the slides today, is that along with the endothelial condition, the health of the blood vessels, the HPA, the brain-gut axis, and all of this, there's something to be said about the importance of making good choices in the foods that we eat. Now, when we have young people, I've seen patients, young grammar school patients that are hypertensive. That shouldn't be. They're too young for that, you would think. But if there's fast food this and fat food that on every other corner, every other plate, then Houston, we got a serious problem. Look at what we eat. So I say that to say again, I go back to the old same expression that I say all the time. Let thy food be thy medicine. Let the medicine be thy food.
Those are very appropriate comments. And I'm gonna let Dr. Hines take the next 2 or 3 slides, and she'll answer a lot of what you're saying very correctly. So, Dr. Gibson, Dr. Hines,
Dr. Maxey,
Yes.
can I interrupt for a moment,
of
please?
course.
Um, because you sent me and us the slides in advance, we are halfway through with our slides, and we are way more than halfway through with the program. And the reason I bring that up is what you have coming up is so important, the dangers of high phosphorus, and then what comes after that. I would love for us to spend a little bit more time on what Dr. Gibson raised, if we could, and then do a part 2 on the slide set that you have. We're at slide number 17, and we got 35 slides.
That's a good point. Let's do the ones on phosphorus, and then we can stop and make the rest part 2.
Okay.
Dr. Hines?
The dangers of high phosphorus.
Next slide.
So what is phosphorus? So phosphorus is a mineral found in many foods, and it is critical in building bones as well as in making energy. But too much of it can be harmful to your body, as is true of many things.
Next slide.
So why is high phosphorus dangerous? So high phosphorus can be an additional factor that can lead to hardened blood vessels. And as we've discussed all day, hardened blood vessels raise your risk of heart disease, impact potential kidney disease or worsen kidney disease. But in this case, that high phosphorus as the source can also weaken your bones. And then weakened bones leads to fractures, and everybody knows that, fractures, especially as you get older, can be life-changing, if not life-ending.
Go ahead, one more.
So considerations with regard to phosphorus. So plant proteins have less bioavailable phosphorus, and processed foods have the highest absorption of phosphorus.
So we get more phosphorus if we eat processed foods more than
Yes.
plants. Okay. Go ahead. One more, I think there's in this series.
So there are some hidden sources of high phosphorus. So processed meats such as your hot dogs, your deli meats. Another source is dark colas and sodas in general, fast food, and packaged snacks with ingredients that contain. So PHOS is an abbreviation for phosphorus.
I think there's one more slide on it.
And so then natural versus added phosphorus. So in natural foods, the absorption, the bioavailability of the phosphorus is going to be about 50%, versus when in processed foods that have a lot of additives, the phosphorus absorption is going to be higher, closer to 95%, if not more.
And I think that's the last one on nutrition. One more. Let's go one more. This was there.
So how can you protect yourself? So read your labels, right? And you want to avoid ingredients with that phosphorus and PHOS is how that might show up. You want to certainly limit your soda and your processed foods. Choose fresh meats, fresh fruits and vegetables, and then certainly ask your doctor about kidney testing.
And let's go to the next slide, and then we'll end.
So the key takeaway here, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
The key takeaway here is that high phosphorus can be damaging to both your heart and your kidneys. And processed foods are the biggest source of excessive phosphorus. And fresh and whole foods are a safer choice to keep you in the more normative range for where your phosphorus should be.
And I had planned to say, change the slide, go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk about this, and then I want to go to what Dr. Walk suggested. So it's important that you distribute your meals with strategy, that you want to make sure that you have at least 20 to 25 grams of protein per meal. And it's important that you have even distribution. But just having protein is not enough. Next slide. So you want to make sure that you have resistance training at least 2 to 3 times a week. That means not just cardio, but you rather use bands, weights, or something, because you want to, again, as we mentioned last week, increase your muscle mass, because that's your biggest defense against insulin sensitivity. Next slide. So what I plan to say is that there are a lot of things that are in commercial products that hurt us, whether it be menthol, cigarettes, and whatnot, but we'll start with that maybe in a week or two about that. Let's stop the slides. And as Dr. Gibson so astutely said, that we talk about all of the things that we're more liable to have. They're mostly metabolic and psychiatric. But then there's the whole intentional environment of what's the opposite of implicit? Is it implicit?
Explicit.
Explicit. So there's explicit bias and implicit bias that we have to face. And then all the rest of the things, like why they have more liquor stores in our community, more menthol cigarettes and other things that can kill us. Any other comments in the chat? Any questions that we have?
Dr. Maxey,
Yes, sir.
just want to make a couple of points. One is just to follow Dr. Gibson. Why are young people doing this? And you can look at it as a lot of people, we talk about comfort food. We get joy and relaxation from eating the foods that we shouldn't eat. As one contributor. And we get around the feeling, the racism and others by saying we're eating these foods, we're eating these giant Subway, giant sandwiches, we're eating these, drinking liquor, we're getting high to be able to deal with these daily stress. So we're exchanging getting transient relaxation for the stresses on your body are still continuing for these ongoing stresses that's slowly deteriorating your bodies. And again, you go to any drug abuse program, you immediately see that the folks there look much older than their equivalents who don't use drugs. The drugs, these so-called foods that are encouraged on TV that are very vivid, high carbohydrate, high processed, all these are ongoing because the people who market them recognize that we see this as one way of treating this ongoing stressful environment that we have.
Thank you so much. If there are no questions or comments in the chat, let's do final comments out of you, Dr. Lawson.
Yeah, very quickly, there's no one, and I'll go right out positionally with a lot of us don't recognize African American men, high suicide rate, us and Native Americans. We're killing ourselves, shooting each other. We're also killing ourselves in terms of using drugs of abuse. This ties in directly with it. These are the more extreme examples, but folks that do not get into those kinds of behaviors are still doing the same thing for the same reasons. The ongoing implicit, we can call it explicit racism that we feel on an ongoing basis, and unfortunately lacking the resources by an individual for which our community can do about to try to bring about changes for these kinds of issues.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hines?
I would just wanted to reiterate, we talked a whole lot about visceral fat and body shapes and body types and the risk there. As in this environment where outward appearance is just getting so much attention these days. I think one of the other things that came out of this discussion is your insides matter too, right? It's not just about what you see on the outside, what size your clothes are, what size your pants are, all of those kinds of things. It matters what's happening on the inside. And again, we came back to the same places that we usually go to, which is, healthy habits, whether that's, healthy habits with your food, but also healthy habits as how you exercise and how you keep your muscles and how you keep moving are important too.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hines. Dr. Walsh?
Thank you, Dr. Maxey. You asked me earlier about when I was the chief health officer in Washington, D.C., and how to get both providers and the general public to listen to some of these things and do some of these things. And I think that it's important for us to, as we say in church, don't get weary in well-doing. We've been doing the Black Health Trust year after year after year, and Black folks are still dying faster than white folks. And it doesn't mean that we stop. It means that we continue to get the message out to people that it's important. It matters a lot that we are able to do what Dr. Maxey started by saying. He gets down on the floor and plays with his grandkids. Okay? It matters to the grandkids that granddaddy gets on the floor and plays with them. So if you don't do it for you, do it for the people that you care about. Try to, if your grandkids see that you're getting up and exercising, they'll get up and exercise. They'll do anything at 2 and 3 years old to spend time with you. So I'm just encouraging us to do what we can to be a good example. Don't just talk about it, be about it, and do things to change what's happening in your home and in your family, and ultimately in all of our neighborhoods and our communities.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walsh. Dr. Neighbor Stevens?
Well, that's really where I was at, Dr. Walks. We've done what we could do in the amount of time that we have to try to explain what's going on inside the body. Everybody is not concerned about or curious about what's going on in the body, but for those who are, we are trying to give you vetted, truthful information so that you can understand what's going on with your body. But our expectation is, and our hope is, that you will use this information in a way to improve your overall health. I'm a pediatrician. I believe in prevention. When you are 75 years old, and I can say that, then it's a little late to be talking about prevention. We're probably talking more about stabilization. But what I hope is that those who are younger than 75, much younger than 75, who are within the sound of our voices, can use this information and implement changes that will lead to improvement. And if we are not communicating what you need to make those changes, please let us know, because that's what we're all about. We want to give you the tools that you need to do what you need to do.
Thank you, Dr. Neighbors. I finally remembered that when I first met you, I think you're about 16 years old, if not 15, and
15.
a high school student. And now you're 39 years old. This
Yeah.
is so
A little water has gone under the bridge since
a
then.
little- But in my church today, Dr. Walsh, they talked about Amos, and he was a prophet, and they call him a fig tree dresser. And the fig tree is something that gives a small amount of fruit, this particular type of fig tree, and only gives it periodically. And the message of that was that he was not a professional prophet, but he was called by God to give information to save the people of Israel. And that method was that he was able to intervene with God, to ask God not to bring death and destruction, and God reconsidered and backed up from it. So part of the reason we talked about what you are on the inside, some of the tools about height to weight ratio, and some of these things that may seem mundane or boring, or so you can be a prophet for your family and have the tools that it takes to measure your abdomen, measure your height, measure your weight, and keep up with the things that will help you take care of your health. It's very much that we all become ministers of our own families and people that we love. Like, you don't know if that grandchild is going to be the new Moses coming up, or the next president or next senator. And we want to make sure that we teach them the things that we need to know. So we had a good old time Baptist service today with the hymns and the amens and whatnot. But the real point was that we're all in our own families influencers. And it's important that we use the best tools that we can. And the last thing I will say is that we are in a national crisis right now. And certain people have called Black people, especially Black men, thugs and whatnot. But where gangs originated and where the original people that were thugs were Italians. And then there was the Ku Klux Klan, and the way that Blacks happened to develop gangs, the Bloods and the Crips, was to protect Black women originally, and then they got introduced to drugs in the 60s. But it's now time to call those Crips and those Bloods and those other people that we call ne'er-do-wells back to the defense of our communities and our kids and whatnot. The real purpose of protect our women, protect our churches, and protect our health. And we all need to be ministers of that. And I thank everybody for joining us. Thank you so much, Simon. See everybody next week.
Dr. Maxey,
Yes.
before you pull the plug, would you allow folks to just reach off in the chat and click on that link that I put in there? That's a link to a Tai Chi for beginners. And that's the top and bottom of what I had to contribute today. It's a small part, but I think it could be a very useful one, because you just click on that link, you could still go to your browser and be able to bookmark it and go back to it and learn a little bit about how you can get in shape easily.
Oh, that's perfect. And send me mine privately since I can't do the chat too well. So much.
You got it.
Simon, thank you so much for your help today. And Simon is a black belt karate person. Probably I'm saying it wrong. And he's exercising now and he's young. Simon?
Tai Chi for Beginners is designed to improve health, fitness, and relaxation.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great
Dr.
Sunday.
Paul Lamb, a family physician
Have a
and
good
Tai
day.
Chi expert.
The neighbor Stevens is getting started already. Go ahead on.
I couldn't get the thing to shut up.
Have a great Sunday, everybody.
Right
Good
on.
day, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.